The officer shoved the woman toward the pavement so hard her purse burst open across the gas station concrete. Lipstick rolled beneath a pickup truck. Car keys skidded near the curb. A bottle of water spun in circles before falling still. "Hands behind your back," the officer barked. "Now." But the woman never screamed. She never begged. She just looked up at him with a calm expression that made his confidence falter for the first time that night. Because while Officer Travis Mullen thought he was humiliating another helpless stranger, he had no idea the woman kneeling in front of him had spent 26 years working inside one of the most powerful intelligence divisions in the country. And with one hidden tap on her phone, she had already triggered something that would destroy his career before sunrise. If you're watching from somewhere in the world tonight, comment your city below. And subscribe, because stories like this remind us how fast power can change hands. The evening heat lingered above the highway as Victoria Hayes guided her silver luxury sedan off exit 14 and into a small roadside gas station outside the town of Ridgeway. The place looked forgotten by time. Faded signs, cracked pavement, buzzing fluorescent lights struggling against the orange glow of sunset. Victoria checked the dashboard clock. 6:11 p.m. She still had over an hour before she needed to meet her husband at the Veterans Foundation banquet in Lexington. Enough time for gas and coffee. Normally, her husband Daniel traveled these routes with her, but tonight he had gone ahead for meetings connected to the Department of Defense charity board he chaired. Victoria preferred driving alone anyway. Silence gave her time to think. The station was quiet except for a red pickup truck parked near the ice machine and an older couple filling their SUV at the far pump. But the moment Victoria stepped out of her car, she felt it. Eyes watching her. Years spent in intelligence work had sharpened instincts most people ignored. She noticed tension before words were spoken, tiny shifts in posture, hesitation, suspicion. The man beside the pickup truck stared openly at her car, then at her, then back at the car, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Victoria ignored him and walked inside. Cold air hit her face immediately. The convenience store smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. Behind the counter stood a woman in her late 50s with stiff blonde hair and a name tag reading DORIS. The cashier smiled automatically at first. Then her expression changed when she saw Victoria clearly. "Evening," Victoria said politely as she grabbed bottled water and poured coffee into a paper cup. Doris watched every movement. "You passing through?" she asked. "Yes." "Long drive?" "Long enough." Victoria placed her items on the counter and handed over cash. The cashier glanced at Victoria's driver's license, then looked at the car keys, then at Victoria again. Her eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "That your vehicle outside?" she asked. Victoria smiled faintly. "Yes." Doris kept staring at the ID longer than necessary. "Too long." Victoria noticed the woman's thumb pause over the Federal Access Indicator, attached to her retired government identification card. The cashier's entire posture shifted. Professional curiosity became suspicion. "You work for the government?" Doris asked carefully. "Used to." "What kind of work?" Victoria met her eyes. "The kind that required privacy." That answer should have ended the conversation. Instead, Doris forced a tight smile and handed back the card. "Well, have a blessed evening." Victoria nodded and walked toward the door. Then she heard it. The soft click of a phone being lifted behind the counter. Outside, the atmosphere had changed. The man near the pickup truck was still watching her. Now he wasn't even pretending not to. Victoria calmly inserted the gas nozzle into her tank. The pump beeped. Numbers rolled upward. The man muttered loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Funny how people suddenly drive cars they can't afford these days. Another customer chuckled awkwardly. Victoria said nothing. She had survived covert operations overseas. Threat briefings, interrogations, hostile surveillance. A small-town bully didn't impress her, but she memorized his face anyway. Always observe. Always document. That habit had kept her alive for decades. Then came the flashing lights. 2 patrol cars swept into the station, so quickly their tires squealed against the pavement. They parked at angles that blocked Victoria's sedan from leaving. Officer Travis Mullen stepped out first. Tall, broad shoulders, the swagger of a man used to immediate obedience. One hand rested near his holster before he even approached her. "Step away from the vehicle," he ordered. No greeting. No explanation. Victoria slowly removed her hand from the gas pump. "Is there a problem, officer? We got reports of suspicious activity." "From whom?" "You asking questions already." "I'm asking what law I've broken." Mullen's jaw tightened. The younger officer behind him shifted uncomfortably. His badge read Cole, Harris. Unlike Mullen, Harris looked uncertain. Mullen pointed toward the car. "Registration and proof of ownership." "In the glove compartment," Victoria replied calmly. "Would you like me to retrieve them?" "Don't move." Victoria folded her hands loosely in front of her. The evening air felt heavier now. People had started recording. Phones appeared near the gas pumps. Inside the store, Dora stood near the window pretending to organize cigarettes while clearly watching everything. Mullen circled Victoria's sedan slowly. "You from around here?" "No." "What brings you through Ridgeway?" "A charity event." "What kind?" "You haven't told me why I'm being detained." His expression darkened instantly. "There it is." "There what is?" "That attitude." Victoria almost smiled. She recognized the pattern immediately. The officer wanted escalation. He needed resistance to justify what he already planned to do. But she refused to give him any. Officer Harris stepped closer to the passenger side. "Sir," he said quietly, "maybe we should just verify the registration first." Mullen yanked open the driver's door himself. He searched the glove compartment aggressively until he found the paperwork. Insurance. Registration. Federal retiree credentials. His confidence flickered for a split second. Then something uglier replaced it. Determination. "These yours?" he demanded, holding up her credentials. "Yes." "You expect me to believe that?" "They're legitimate." "Hey." He stared at the documents again. Then at Victoria. Then at the crowd gathering around them. "You know what this looks like to me," he announced loudly. "Looks like stolen credentials." Officer Harris frowned. "Sir, they scan authentic." "Fake IDs scan authentic all the time." Victoria watched him carefully. Not angry. Not emotional. Just calculating. "Officer," she said evenly, "you have valid registration, insurance, and identification in your hand. I have complied with every request. You're resisting the investigation." "How?" "By being argumentative." The crowd murmured. Someone whispered, "Damn." Victoria could feel the situation slipping somewhere dangerous. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because Mullen needed her to be guilty now. Too many people were watching. Too much ego involved. He stepped closer. "You know what your problem is," he said quietly enough that only she could hear. "People like you think rules don't apply. Victoria held his stare. And people like you think suspicion counts as evidence. That did it. His face hardened instantly. Turn around. On what charge? Forgery, obstruction, failure to comply. Those are not legitimate charges. Turn around. Phones lifted higher. The station fell silent. Victoria slowly placed her coffee cup on top of the pump. Then she turned carefully and placed her hands behind her back. The cuffs snapped shut hard enough to leave marks immediately. Officer Harris visibly flinched. Mullen shoved her forward toward the hood of the patrol car. Thought you were smarter than this, he muttered. Victoria remained calm. That calmness unsettled him more than screaming ever could. Her purse was dumped onto the hood. Wallet, phone, keys, documents, everything exposed publicly. Humiliation as performance. Mullen held up one of her credit cards dramatically. These yours too? Yes. You sure? Officer Harris looked increasingly uncomfortable. Sir, he said carefully, the names match everything else. Mullen ignored him. Victoria's phone vibrated across the hood. Daniel. Calling again. Mullen snatched up the phone. You got somebody important waiting for you, he mocked. Victoria said nothing. Because in that exact moment, her left hand brushed the edge of the device. One precise motion. A hidden emergency command, activated through muscle memory alone. Years earlier, Daniel had insisted she keep the security protocol enabled whenever traveling alone. If triggered, the phone would instantly transmit GPS coordinates, live metadata, and emergency authentication to a protected federal monitoring network tied to retired intelligence personnel and military families. A silent alarm. One almost nobody knew existed. The signal was already moving before Mullen shoved the phone into his pocket. You think someone gonna save you, he sneered. Victoria looked directly at him. I think you've made a mistake. He laughed loudly for the crowd. Sure I did. Then his radio crackled. Unit 12, confirmed detainee identity immediately. Mullen grabbed the radio. Suspicious subject detained, situation under control. Static. Then a different voice answered. Not local dispatch. Unit 12, this is Federal Communications Override. Confirm status of Victoria Hayes immediately. Mullen froze. Officer Harris looked up sharply. The crowd went quiet. Repeat, Mullen said slowly. Confirm whether Victoria Hayes is currently in custody. For the first time all evening. Fear crossed his face. Hundreds of miles away, inside a defense conference center in Washington, Daniel Hayes stared at the alert flashing across his secure device. The image showed his wife in handcuffs beside a patrol vehicle. His expression changed instantly. People nearby stopped talking when they saw his face. Within seconds, phones were ringing across multiple agencies. Back at the gas station, Mullen grabbed Victoria's arm aggressively. Get in the car. That would be unwise, she replied. Move. He shoved her into the backseat. Officer Harris hesitated beside the open door. Sir, maybe we should slow down. You want to question my judgment? No, but federal override usually means. I said get in your damn car. The patrol vehicle sped away from the station. Victoria sat upright, despite the painful angle of the cuffs behind her back. Streetlights blurred past the windows. Mullen kept checking the mirrors. Not watching traffic. Watching for consequences. You think you're special, he snapped suddenly. Victoria remained silent. I've dealt with people like you before. No response. Answer me. "You've already decided who I am," she said quietly. "Why would facts matter now?" His grip tightened on the steering wheel. Behind them, Officer Harris followed in the second cruiser, visibly speaking into his radio nonstop. By the time they reached Ridgeway Police Department, calls from state oversight officials had already begun flooding the station. Chief Angela Mercer was halfway through paperwork when her office phone rang. Then rang again. Then again. Each call carried increasing urgency. Federal inquiry. Military liaison. Civil rights review. When she finally heard the name Victoria Hayes, her stomach dropped. Not because of Daniel Hayes' influence, but because she recognized Victoria immediately. Years earlier, Mercer had attended joint federal training seminars where Victoria lectured law enforcement groups about intelligence ethics and constitutional conduct. The woman sitting in her holding cell wasn't just connected. She was respected. Deeply respected. And somehow, Officer Travis Mullen had arrested her at a gas station for existing while driving a nice car. Mercer stormed into booking just as Victoria's fingerprints were being processed. "What the hell is happening here?" she demanded. The room went silent. Mullen straightened immediately. "Possible fraud case." "Based on what?" She was suspicious. Mercer stared at him. "That's your probable cause." Mullen tried again. "Forged credentials." "They're authentic," Officer Harris interrupted quietly. Everyone turned toward him. Harris swallowed hard. "I verified them myself." Mullen looked ready to explode. Mercer's face darkened. She looked at Victoria standing calmly beneath the fluorescent lights, dignity intact despite the humiliation. Then she noticed the marks on her wrists. "Oh my God," Mercer whispered under her breath. Victoria spoke evenly. "I requested legal counsel 20 minutes ago." Mercer immediately pointed toward the holding area. "Get those cuffs off her now." Nobody moved fast enough. "I said now." An officer rushed forward with keys. The cuffs opened. Deep red indentation circled Victoria's wrists. The entire booking room seemed to shrink under the weight of what everyone suddenly realized. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a disaster. And it was already spreading online. Outside the station, reporters had begun gathering. Videos from the gas station were exploding across social media. One clip showed Mullen saying, "People like you don't drive cars like this." Another captured Victoria asking calmly, "What law have I broken?" Millions of viewers were already answering that question themselves. Attorney Rebecca Sloan arrived 23 minutes later. Sharp suit. Hard eyes. No patience. She walked directly past officers and entered the interview room where Victoria sat with Chief Mercer. "My client says charges are still listed as pending review," Rebecca said immediately. Mercer looked exhausted. "We're correcting the paperwork." "No," Rebecca replied coldly. "You're trying to limit liability." Victoria sat quietly listening. Rebecca placed documents on the table. "We are demanding preservation of all footage, body cams, dispatch records, internal communications, and arrest reports effective immediately." Mercer rubbed her forehead. "You have my word." Rebecca's expression never changed. "With respect, Chief, your officer also had a word." Silence. Meanwhile, in another room, Officer Harris sat staring at his body camera footage. Every second made him sicker. Mullen escalating immediately. Ignoring documentation. Twisting calm answers into noncompliance. Harris remembered the moment he almost spoke up publicly at the gas station. Almost. That word haunted him now. Outside, cameras flashed wildly as Daniel Hayes finally arrived. Not with security. Not with threats. Just with quiet fury. The moment Victoria saw him enter the station lobby, her composure cracked for the first time all night. Only slightly. Just enough for him to notice. Daniel crossed the room and took her hands carefully. His eyes moved to the bruises around her wrists. Then to Mullen, standing across the hallway. The officer suddenly looked much smaller than before. "You okay?" Daniel asked softly. Victoria nodded once. "I am now." The next 12 hours destroyed Ridgeway Police Department. More witnesses came forward. A truck driver released clearer footage. The gas station surveillance videos were secured before anyone could tamper with them. And the videos showed everything. Victoria calm. Mullen aggressive. No resistance. No threat. No crime. By morning, state investigators had seized department records. By noon, national media outlets carried the story. By afternoon, old complaints against Officer Mullen resurfaced. Traffic stop bias. Excessive force allegations. Dismissed civilian complaints. Patterns. Always patterns. Chief Mercer realized too late what kind of officer she had allowed to operate unchecked. And then Officer Harris made the decision that changed everything. He gave a formal statement. Under oath. He admitted Mullen ignored valid identification. Ignored evidence. Invented probable cause after the stop had already escalated. The blue wall cracked instantly. Mullen was called back to the station that evening. Not as an officer. As a suspect. He entered through a side door to avoid reporters. But cameras still caught him. No swagger now. No arrogance. Just sweat and panic. Inside the conference room, investigators laid out the evidence one piece at a time. Video. Audio. Reports. Witness statements. Then they placed Harris's testimony in front of him. Mullen read silently. His face turned pale. "You're throwing me under the bus for doing my job," he snapped. Investigator Nolan leaned forward. "No, we're arresting you for abusing your authority." Mullen laughed nervously. "You can't arrest a cop over one mistake." Nolan slid another folder across the table. "This isn't one mistake." The folder contained prior complaints. Ignored warnings. A history of targeting drivers based on appearance and assumptions. Mullen realized then that nobody in the room was protecting him anymore. Not the union. Not the department. Not even Chief Mercer. 2 state officers entered quietly. One removed Mullen's badge. The other placed handcuffs on the table in front of him. The exact sound of metal hitting wood echoed through the room. And for the first time since that gas station stop, Officer Travis Mullen understood exactly how powerless handcuffs could make someone feel. Outside the building, reporters exploded into shouting questions as he was escorted through the lobby. Camera flashes lit his face. Victoria watched silently from across the hallway, beside Daniel and Rebecca. Mullen looked at her once. Just once. But she showed him no anger. No triumph. Only disappointment. And somehow that hurt him more. Later that evening, Ridgeway officials held a public press conference. Chief Mercer announced policy reforms. Bias retraining. Independent oversight reviews. Mandatory body camera audits. But everyone listening knew reforms weren't the real story. The real story stood beside the podium afterward when Victoria Hayes stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. She spoke calmly, clearly, powerfully. What happened to me should never happen to anyone, she said. And the truth is, it usually happens to people without resources, without cameras, without someone powerful enough to force accountability. Reporters scribbled furiously. Victoria continued. I was lucky. Many people are not. Real justice is not about protecting people with influence. It's about protecting the vulnerable when nobody is watching. Even some officers lowered their eyes. Because deep down, they knew she was right. That night, after the interviews ended and the crowds disappeared, Victoria asked Daniel to drive her somewhere unexpected. Back to the gas station. The same fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The same pump stood quietly beneath the darkening sky. But the atmosphere felt completely different now. Ashamed. Nervous. The station owner rushed outside when he saw her. Mrs. Hayes, I just want to apologize. Victoria stopped him gently. I came to buy water. Nothing more. Inside, customers avoided staring at her. Nobody questioned whether she belonged there anymore. Nobody whispered. Nobody laughed. Fear had replaced judgment. Victoria picked up a bottle of water and walked slowly toward the register. She paused briefly near pump 4, the exact place where she had been forced onto her knees less than 24 hours earlier. She looked down at the concrete silently, then back toward the highway. The humiliation no longer lived there. Neither did fear. Only memory. Daniel waited quietly by the car while she returned. You okay? He asked. Victoria looked back once at the gas station, lights glowing against the night. Yes, she said softly. And she meant it. Because she had survived the worst thing people like Officer Mullen could do. Not by screaming louder. Not by using power recklessly. But by refusing to surrender her dignity while they tried to take it away. As they drove onto the highway, the gas station disappeared behind them little by little. But Ridgway would remember that night for years. The night one officer abused his badge. The night witnesses finally spoke up. And the night a woman everyone underestimated forced an entire system to confront itself. Sometimes justice arrives loudly. Sometimes it arrives quietly. And sometimes it arrives in the calm voice of a woman standing in handcuffs, looking directly at the person destroying himself, and saying, "You've made a mistake."